The movie in question is Babylon, directed by Damien Chazelle. Chazelle is the man responsible for the movies Whiplash, La La Land, and First Man. All of those movies were highly celebrated by critics and audiences alike, cementing Chazelle among both as one of Hollywood's most prominent and talented directors, as well as one of its youngest. However, it seems that status has begun to dwindle with the release of Babylon, his latest and certainly most ambitious movie. And after seeing it, I can kind of understand why. And for those who haven't yet seen it, I will keep my explanation spoiler-free. Babylon is a multi-angled look at old Hollywood in the late 20s and early 30s, and loosely chronicles the tenuous transition from silent motion pictures to talkies. There are a lot of adjectives that can describe Babylon. Like its director's vision, it is ambitious. It's also vulgar, vigorous, decadent, and at times quite a bit devious. It's a cinematic Roman orgy and shatters any illusion one might have had of the time period having more decorum or being generally more decent than the present day. Babylon's wickedness is not something Chazelle conceals. Within the first few minutes, we're treated to the sight of an elephant defecating all over someone, and the scene is done with an excessive level of detail and maybe a bit of relish as well. If that and a Dionysian level of drugs, sex, and alcohol consumption is something that might give you pause, then steering clear of this film is probably your best bet. Truthfully speaking, with the pure excess on display in Babylon, nearly every minute of the movie feels somehow self-indulgent, and that is a part of Babylon's fatal flaw, but more on that in a bit. Babylon's depravity really begins with its grand sweeping opening party sequence. That sequence is pure debauchery. It's like if Federico Fellini snorted an elephant trunk-sized line of coke and then proceeded to direct Eyes Wide Shut. The party's madness comes to a brief pause, however, to introduce our primary protagonists. We have an electrifying Margot Robbie as the sizzling, freewheeling, aspiring starlet Nellie Leroy, and the relatively unknown yet impressive Diego Calva as Manny Torres, a Mexican immigrant who leverages his ambition and intelligence to climb the ranks from studio handyman to fixer all the way up to studio executive. Being newcomers to the industry, they guide us through the masquerade of glitz and glamour into the sordid world concealed beneath. A world already mastered by our third protagonist, Brad Pitt's Jack Conrad, the archetype of the dashing leading man who is a bit of a libertine and is not shy about reveling in the spoils of his success. Ravenous for refreshments at the party, Manny escorts Nellie into a stockroom, and over a mountain of nefarious powders, we learn their motivations. They're both starved for a sense of meaning. They yearn to be an integral part of something larger than themselves, and they recognize the chance for achieving that in the movies. The movies are even more important than life, Manny declares. For them, the movies are more than discardable entertainment. Whether making them or watching them, the movies are an opportunity. An opportunity to envision yourself as a hero or a villain. An opportunity to escape from the pain or mundanity of life. An opportunity to dream. On that front, not much has changed in the nearly 100 years that have elapsed. Because of that, because of our own love for the movies and the universality of the striving for meaning, the job of understanding their motivations is made straightforward. On the flip side of that paradigm, we have Jack Conrad. In the industry, he's been around the block so often that the only place left for him to go is over the hill. When adding sound into films revolutionized the industry, Jack's reluctance to adapt and his lackluster results threw him out of favor with the studios. Jack, in his somber state, becomes a tool for Chazelle to explore the theme of achieving immortality through your work. And this is what I found to be really the most interesting idea working in Babylon. This theme, as well as the theme of striving for meaning, fits in with the main thesis of a book I've referenced many times in prior videos called The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. To keep it short, the main idea of the book is that humanity inherently harbors a potent terror at the prospect of death, and that deep fear of death and the fear of leading an insignificant life is the driving force behind our actions and motivations. It guides us towards building a legacy so that we will not be easily forgotten and can thereby evade or deny death. Chazelle has explored this theme in several of his past films. For example, Miles Teller's character in Whiplash is so intensely fueled by ambition to be the best drummer that it utterly devours his life. There is no room for anything else besides the drums. It's a kind of self-annihilation. Family, friends, hobbies, etc. are all sacrificed on the altar of legacy. You may not live fully while you're alive, but your work or art will live on in your place when you die. Jack Conrad, however, isn't quite the same in that his vices vie for prominence with his legacy. But still, he works very prolifically, and besides a revolving door of partners and fiancés, has no family and doesn't carve out time for his one true friend. Conrad, however, is unique in the sense that Chazelle is exploring this common theme in his work more reflectively than before. Through someone who's come to find themselves on the outside looking in as opposed to being in the thick of it. Very minor spoiler alert ahead. It culminated in a scene where Jack confronts a gossip columnist over a negative article written about him. The gist of what she tells Jack is that while his reign may be over, he, like all the stars of his time and the stars of the future, will one day be gone, but through their films, they will live on. Someone 100 years down the line will see him on the silver screen and identify with him and dream that they were him. Jack's legacy is secured, and this gives him some comfort. But it highlights the ephemeral nature of celebrity. It sets the table for disappointment and grief. No matter how desired you are, you'll be discarded for the next hot thing, and the choice to do so will be easy. This is painfully experienced by Nellie. Along with her talent, her devil-may-care attitude and salacious personality propelled her rise to stardom. But as the transition to talkies proved difficult, and under the pressure of the studio suppressing her authenticity, she became more unstable, more reliant on addictive activities, and eventually it was decided that all the juice had been squeezed from her, and thus the industry cleaned their hands of her. A major point of uncertainty for many critics is what exactly Chazelle's stance on Hollywood is. On one hand, he glorifies the behind-the-scenes debauchery and highlights the element of human exploitation. On the other, he romanticizes the making of movies and asserts that they are a source of great meaning. Some view it as ambivalence, but considering how assured Chazelle is as a filmmaker, it might be more accurately labeled as nuance. The unethical doings of the industry cannot be overlooked, but neither can the magic it produces. Babylon is simultaneously a love letter to the movies, specifically the unifying collective act of watching movies at the movies, and a middle finger to the industry itself. The latter makes it a bit puzzling as to why prominent players in that same industry not only gave this film the green light, but also gave its director over $100 million to play with. And play, Chazelle certainly did. It very much seems that with the luxuries and control he was afforded, Chazelle struggled with the same hedonism as his characters, and that is what I believe is the film's fatal flaw. One could argue that it was made that way intentionally to reflect the excesses of the period, but I have a hard time believing a director like Chazelle would do something like that at the audience's expense. Some have taken issue with the structure of the story, that it feels more like a series of loosely related vignettes than a cohesive narrative. I didn't find that to be too much of an issue. In my opinion, where Babylon's excesses try the audience's patience the most is in its over 3-hour long runtime. There were few dull moments in the film, but instances where scenes and sequences could have been trimmed were obvious, and the time saved could have been reallocated to fleshing out the protagonists that ultimately felt more like common archetypes than genuine people. With its vivid world and intriguing web of characters, Babylon is one of those films that I think would have drastically improved in quality if it were a limited series. Without a doubt, the most self-indulgent aspect of Babylon is its strange and bold final sequence. This is an ending that a lot of people are going to absolutely hate for reasons that I'm not going to get into entirely for the sake of remaining mostly spoiler-free. But suffice it to say, while I understand the intent, it was such a puzzling decision that it completely yanks you out of the narrative. To an extent, I can respect Chazelle's audacity, but I was not a fan of it, to put it lightly. I'd like to end this review on a positive note, because while Babylon has some noticeable warts, I still really enjoyed watching this movie in theaters. Firstly, it's encouraging that major studios are giving talented directors opportunities like this and financially backing their vision. Although some restraint probably should have been exercised on Chazelle's part, I would encourage you to still go out, support it, and see it in a theater. And finally, I want to give some praise to the cast for their great performances and the crew that brought this grand spectacle of a picture to fruition. Also, the cinematography from Linus Sandgren and the score from Justin Hurwitz are both incredible. What were your thoughts on Babylon? Did it disappoint or exceed your expectations? Do you agree or disagree with my take? Be sure to let me know in the comments section, where the conversation will continue.